I'm Tessa Anderson, and from my earliest memories, I knew I was different from everyone else in our prestigious antique business dynasty. My parents, Robert and Eleanor Anderson, ran a network of antique shops and restoration workshops that had been in our family for generations, passed down from my great-great-grandfather. Our house was like a museum, filled with paintings, antique furniture, and what my parents called priceless artifacts. My older sister, Claire, fit perfectly into this world. 6 years my senior, she was everything my parents wanted in a daughter: artistic, cultured, and completely devoted to the family business. By age 12, she could already tell a genuine Renaissance painting from a replica, while I struggled to see any difference at all. My mind worked differently. Give me a math problem, and I'd solve it in seconds. Show me a physics equation, and it made perfect sense. But art? It might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. Dad, I tried explaining one evening when I was 14, I really think I'd be better suited for something else. Maybe business or engineering. He looked at me like I'd suggested becoming a circus performer. Tessa, he used my full name, which always meant trouble. This business has been in our family for generations. Your sister understands the importance of tradition. Why do you insist on being so different? Claire, who was passing by with her sketchbook, couldn't resist adding her 2 cents. Maybe you're adopted, Tess. I mean, you clearly don't have the Anderson artistic gene. Claire, Mom scolded, but I could see the slight smile she tried to hide. That hurt more than Claire's actual words. As the years went by, the pressure to conform only grew stronger. Every family dinner turned into a lecture about the importance of art and culture. Every school break meant mandatory internships at our shops, where I felt completely out of place among the antiques and art enthusiasts. I started finding ways to rebel. Small things at first, forgetting my art history assignments, skipping family gallery visits, spending more time in the math lab at school. But my parents' constant disappointment and Claire's perfect daughter act pushed me further. I remember the day I first lit up a cigarette behind the school gym. The act itself wasn't particularly satisfying, but knowing how much it would horrify my health-conscious, image-obsessed family gave me a twisted sense of pleasure. Looking back now, I can see how lost I was. The more they pushed me to be something I wasn't, the more I pushed back. It became a vicious cycle. They'd pressure me about the family business, I'd act out, they'd tighten their control, and I'd find new ways to rebel. I became an expert at forging Dad's signature on school notes. It started when they were called in for another discussion about my behavior. I perfectly mimicked his distinctive handwriting, explaining why he couldn't attend. The irony wasn't lost on me. My one artistic talent was forgery, something that would have horrified my antique-dealing parents if they'd known. My 18th birthday felt less like a celebration of adulthood and more like a countdown to my personal prison sentence. We've enrolled you in the Art Institute, Dad announced over dinner, sliding the acceptance letter across the table like it was some kind of gift. You'll study art history and conservation. It's time you got serious about your future in the business. I stared at the letter, my hands shaking. I already told you, I want to study business analytics at State University. I got accepted there too. Mom's face hardened. That's out of the question, Tessa. We won't pay for you to waste your time on numbers. She said it like it was a dirty word. Your sister's already managing one of our shops, Dad added proudly. In a few years, you could be doing the same. I stood up so suddenly, my chair fell backward. I don't want to be like Claire. I don't want anything to do with antiques or art or this whole suffocating business. That night, I packed a bag and walked out. I expected them to come after me, to try to stop me, to at least call. They didn't. Their silence spoke volumes. I was finally free, but I was also completely alone. My friend Sarah let me crash on her couch for a few weeks, then I moved in with Jenny from high school. I picked up whatever jobs I could find, waitressing, retail, data entry. Nothing lasted long, but it was enough to survive. Then I met Mike. He seemed different from the trust fund kids I'd grown up around. He had a regular job in sales, his own apartment, and didn't care about my family drama. When he offered to let me move in after 2 months of dating, I jumped at the chance. 6 months later, I was staring at a positive pregnancy test in his tiny bathroom. My hands were trembling just like they had that night with the Art Institute letter, but for entirely different reasons. "Get rid of it," Mike said flatly when I told him. No discussion, no options. Just 2 cold words. "I want to keep it," I replied, my voice stronger than I felt. "Then you can't stay here." He started packing my things, before I could even process what was happening. I'm not ready to be a father, and I'm definitely not supporting someone else's kid. Suddenly homeless and pregnant, I swallowed my pride and went to my parents' house. Maybe seeing their daughter in genuine need would soften their hearts. "Please," I begged, standing in their immaculate living room while they sat rigidly on their antique sofa. "I just need help with real estate agent courses. I can make a good living, support myself and the baby." "A baby?" Mom interrupted, her face pale. "You're pregnant?" "Who's the father?" Dad demanded. "Mike, he's..." "That sales clerk you were living with?" Mom looked like she might faint. "Absolutely not. We will not have our family name tarnished by an illegitimate child from some nobody. You're not welcome in this house." Dad's voice was ice cold. "Not with that situation. We have a reputation to maintain. What would our clients think?" After my parents' rejection, I found myself sitting on a park bench, one hand on my still flat stomach, wondering what to do next. That's when I remembered, Claire had always been Dad's favorite, but maybe, just maybe, sister to sister, she'd help me. I called her from a payphone near the park. To my surprise, she agreed to meet me at a small cafe downtown. "Claire, I know we've never been close, but I need help," I said, fighting back tears. "I just need enough for the real estate courses, and maybe first month's rent somewhere. I'll pay you back, I swear." She stirred her cappuccino thoughtfully. "Actually, I might be able to help. But Tess, you'll need to help me too." "Anything," I said, relief flooding through me. The next day, Claire met me at her office after hours. She handed me an envelope stuffed with cash, more than I'd expected, and then pulled out a folder. "Just some paperwork," she said casually. "Shipping authorizations, transfer documents, you know how Dad is with his paperwork. He's been so busy lately, and I'm trying to help manage things." "You want me to?" I looked at the blank sheets mixed in with the documents. "Just sign them like Dad would." "Come on, Tess, we both know you're better at his signature than he is." She laughed. "Consider it your last art project for the family." I should have known it was too good to be true. Should have asked more questions. Should have read every document carefully. But when you're pregnant, broke, and your perfect sister finally seems to be on your side, you don't look too closely at the gift horse's teeth. I signed everything she put in front of me. Document after document, blank page after blank page, Dad's signature flowing from my pen in perfect imitation. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Dad, and he was livid. "Get to the house, now." His voice was trembling with rage. Walking into that house felt like entering a lion's den. Dad was pacing the living room, his face purple with anger. Mom sat rigid in her chair, while Claire stood by the fireplace, her face was a perfect mask of innocence. "You ungrateful little thief," Dad exploded the moment I walked in. "Wasn't it enough to embarrass us with your condition? Now you're stealing from your own family?" "What? I haven't stolen anything," I protested. He thrust some papers in my face, shipping manifests and sales receipts for several valuable paintings from their collection, all bearing his signature. My signature. These paintings were shipped out 2 days ago. Sold to private collectors. He was shaking with rage. "I never signed these papers." "But someone did." I felt the blood drain from my face as I looked at the documents. They were the same ones Claire had me sign, but now filled out with details of artwork sales I knew nothing about. "Dad, wait." You don't understand, I pleaded, my voice shaking. Claire asked me to sign those papers. She said they were just routine documents. The moment the words left my mouth, Claire's mask of innocence transformed into a look of shocked hurt. She was always the better actor between us. How dare you, she gasped. Daddy, I saw her here 2 days ago, sneaking around the house when everyone was at the gallery opening. I thought she was here to apologize to you and Mom, so I didn't say anything, but now. That's a lie, I screamed. I haven't been here in days. Claire gave me those papers to sign, she set me up. Dad's face hardened even further. Enough. First you shame this family with your pregnancy, and now you try to blame your sister for your crimes? Claire has dedicated her life to this business. She would never. But I'm telling the truth. I was crying now, my hands protectively covering my stomach. Please, Dad, just listen. I've heard enough, he cut me off, his voice ice cold. You are no longer my daughter. I'm removing you from my will, and I want you to stay away from this family. You're dead to us. Mom just sat there, silent tears running down her face, while Claire played the role of devastated sister perfectly. Within hours, the phone call started. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all calling to express their disgust with my behavior. Claire had apparently been busy, spreading the story of my theft through the family grapevine. I can't believe you would do this to your own parents, Aunt Margaret's voicemail said. Don't even think about coming to Sunday dinner anymore. We always knew that girl would turn out bad, I overheard Uncle James telling my cousin. Stay away from her, she's nothing but a thief and a liar. The stress was overwhelming. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time my phone rang, it was another relative calling to disown me. Each message was another nail in the coffin of my former life. 3 days after the confrontation, the cramping started. Sharp, terrible pains that had me doubled over. Then the blood came. I called an ambulance from my cheap motel room, but I already knew. By the time I reached the hospital, I had lost everything, my family, my reputation, and now my baby. The doctor said it was likely caused by extreme stress and anxiety. After being released from the hospital, I spent weeks barely existing. But one morning, I woke up and saw Claire's face smirking at me in my dreams, and something inside me snapped. They wanted me to fail? Fine. I'd show them just how wrong they were about me. I found New Beginnings, a women's support organization, through a flyer at a local coffee shop. Walking into their office was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Admitting I needed help went against everything my proud family had taught me. But Sandra, my caseworker, didn't see a failure or a disappointment when she looked at me. She saw potential. You're good with numbers, you say, she asked during our first meeting. And you understand property values? Have you considered real estate? That conversation changed everything. The organization helped me enroll in real estate courses, provided a small stipend for basic needs, and even helped me find temporary housing in their women's shelter. All those years of analyzing property values in my head while my parents dragged me through antique shops had given me an instinct for market value. My mathematical mind could calculate mortgage payments and investment returns in seconds. And maybe, growing up watching people haggle over precious artifacts had taught me something about negotiation after all. I got my license in record time and landed a job at Metropolitan Real Estate. My first sale was a small condo, but the commission felt better than any praise my parents had ever given me. The clients, a young couple buying their first home, hugged me after the closing. We didn't think we could afford anything in this neighborhood, they told me. But you made it happen. More deals followed. I had a knack for matching people with properties, for seeing potential where others saw problems. Within 6 months, I was the agency's top performer. The money started flowing in, enough to rent a nice apartment in a secure building, buy professional clothes, and start building my own savings account. I quit smoking, joined a gym, and cut ties with the party crowd I'd hung around with during my rebellion years. My life was finally my own, and I was making it count. That's how I met James. He came in looking for commercial property for his tech startup. The moment he walked into my office, I knew this client was different. He didn't care about my family connections or social status. He was impressed by my knowledge of commercial real estate trends and my ability to crunch numbers on the fly. "You know," he said after our third property viewing, "we could discuss the rest of these listings over dinner." Our first date turned into weekly dates. He introduced me to his family, warm, unpretentious people who cared more about character than pedigree. His mother hugged me the first time we met, and his father actually listened when I talked about market analysis and investment strategies. A year later, James proposed. We had a small ceremony in his parents' backyard. No fancy church, no society photographers, no elaborate reception. Just us, his family, and a few close friends I'd made along the way. His mother helped me pick out a simple white dress, and his sisters decorated the garden with fairy lights. For the first time since losing my baby, I felt like I belonged somewhere. James wasn't just supportive of my career, he was my biggest champion. When I mentioned wanting to start my own agency, he didn't hesitate. "You've got the talent and the client base," he said, looking over my business plan. "Let me help with the startup costs. Consider it an investment in our future." Tessa Anderson Real Estate opened its doors 6 months after our wedding. But even as I was cutting the ribbon at our grand opening, I knew something was missing. "I want to get my business degree," I told James over dinner that night. "I'm doing well on instinct and experience, but I need the formal education to take this to the next level." He smiled. "I was wondering when you'd decide to do that. You know, Mom and Dad had an argument about how long it would be before you talked about college." That was another blessing in my life, my in-laws. Sunday dinners at their house became a tradition. James's mom taught me her secret recipes, his dad offered business advice, and his siblings treated me like I'd always been part of the family. No one judged me for not knowing about art or antiques. No one compared me to anyone else. I managed to balance running the agency, attending classes, and family time. My grades were excellent. Turns out when you're studying something you actually love, learning comes naturally. The business concepts I'd always understood intuitively finally had names and frameworks. Then one morning, as I was getting ready for class, a familiar name on the morning news caught my attention: major scandal in art world, prestigious antique dealer accused of selling forgeries. The headline screamed about Asian-made copies being sold as originals through a respected family business. I sat in my office, staring at the news on my computer screen in disbelief. My father, who'd disowned me for allegedly damaging the family reputation, was now at the center of the biggest art fraud scandal in years. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Tessa?" My mother's voice was barely recognizable. "Please don't hang up." "What do you want?" My voice was steady, surprisingly calm. "It was Claire," she sobbed. "All these years, she's been running a forgery operation through our shops. Those paintings you were accused of stealing? They were fake she needed to get rid of. The real ones had been sold months before. She's been doing this for years." The auction house's authentication process exposed everything. I leaned back in my chair, letting the irony wash over me. "We're facing multiple lawsuits," she continued. "Millions in damages. Our reputation, everything we built. Tessa, we need your help. We know you're successful now, and James's family has resources. Please, we need money for lawyers." "You want my help?" I said into the phone, my voice ice cold. "Fine. Here's my price. I want a public apology. Not just from you and Dad, from everyone. Every single relative who called me a thief, who spread rumors about me, who turned their backs when I needed them most. And I want Claire to confess what she did to me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I'll see what I can do," my mother finally whispered. A week later, a video appeared in my email. It was filmed during our annual family Thanksgiving gathering, an event I hadn't attended in years. The familiar dining room was packed with relatives, and there, standing at the head of the table, was Claire. "I need to confess something," my sister's voice trembled. "Years ago, when Tessa was accused of stealing those paintings, it was me. I set her up. I made her sign documents when she came to me for help, then used them to cover up my own crimes. Tessa was innocent." The video continued as, one by one, my relatives stood up to apologize. Aunt Margaret, tears streaming down her face, admitted she should have known better than to believe the worst about me. Uncle James expressed his shame at how quickly he'd condemned me. Cousins I'd grown up with acknowledged their role in ostracizing me. My father spoke last, looking older than I remembered. "We failed you, Tessa. We chose to believe the worst about you because it was easier than admitting we might be wrong about who you were. We pushed you away when you needed us most, and because of our actions, you lost." His voice broke. "You lost your child. Your mother and I will carry that guilt forever." I sat in my home office, watching the video 3 times before opening my social media account. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I began typing. "To my extended family, thank you for your apologies. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, and I appreciate that you finally found that courage. I accept your apologies and am grateful for the truth finally coming to light." I hit post, took a deep breath, and started typing again. "However, to my immediate family, while I acknowledge your apologies, I cannot and will not help you with your current legal troubles. Years ago, when I came to you pregnant, alone, and desperate, you chose your reputation over your daughter. Your actions and rejection led to the loss of my unborn child, a pain I live with every day. The only assistance I will offer is the contact information for a competent lawyer. What you do with that information is up to you." I attached the lawyer's business card to the post and hit send. Then, methodically, I began blocking numbers, my parents, Claire, their business lines. I blocked their social media accounts, their email addresses, every possible way they had to reach me. The trial of Claire Anderson became one of the biggest art fraud cases in recent history. I didn't attend any of the proceedings, but I followed the news coverage from the comfort of my office. Each revelation was more shocking than the last. The scheme had been running for nearly a decade, with hundreds of forged paintings sold to unsuspecting collectors worldwide. My sister, the perfect daughter, the artistic prodigy, was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The evidence was overwhelming: offshore accounts, correspondence with forgers in Asia, detailed records of every fake she'd passed off as authentic. The prosecutors called it one of the most sophisticated art fraud operations they'd ever seen. The civil suits that followed were devastating. My parents had to sell everything: the shops, the workshops, their house, even Mom's precious jewelry collection. The Anderson family name, once synonymous with artistic excellence and integrity, became a cautionary tale in the antique world. Last I heard, they'd moved into a small apartment and still owed millions to angry collectors. I was 8 months pregnant now, and this time everything was different. No stress, no fear, no desperate pleas for help. Instead, I had a loving husband who attended every doctor's appointment, in-laws who were already arguing over who would host the baby shower, and a successful business that practically ran itself thanks to the amazing team I'd built. My real estate agency had expanded to 3 locations, and we were known as one of the most reliable firms in the city. Every time I walked into one of my offices, seeing my name, Tessa Anderson, on the door, filled me with pride. I'd built this on my own terms, using the skills my parents had dismissed as worthless. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd pushed me so hard to join their business, claiming it was the only path to success. Now their precious empire was in ruins, while I was thriving in the field they'd sneered at. My final semester of college was interesting, to say the least. Waddling into classes with my enormous belly, laptop balanced precariously on what was left of my lap. But I was determined to finish before the baby came. My professors were amazingly supportive, and my grades hadn't slipped despite the pregnancy. Looking back now, I don't regret refusing to help them. Some might call it cruel, but I call it justice. They'd chosen their golden child over me, and that choice had cost them everything. Meanwhile, I'd built my own success story, created my own family, found my own happiness. The baby kicks, and I smile, thinking about the future. My child will grow up in a home filled with love and acceptance, surrounded by people who value them for who they are, not who they're expected to be. They'll never know the pain of being the family disappointment, never feel the pressure to be someone they're not. Tomorrow, I'll graduate with my business degree. James and his family will be there, cheering embarrassingly loud when I waddle across the stage. My massive belly might make it a bit awkward to get my diploma, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Sometimes I think about that scared, pregnant girl who left home with nothing but a broken heart and a forged signature. She couldn't have imagined this future: successful businesswoman, beloved wife, soon-to-be mother, college graduate. But she knew one thing: she was stronger than they thought. And she was right.